If you're a child of the 90s and you grew up in Canada watching MuchMusic, like myself, our next guest needs no introduction, but you might know him as a VJ, you'll know him as an editor, you'll know him behind the scenes on TV, but you'll now know him as an author with his first book, A Happy HasBeen, a long title here, Bill, Exciting Times and Lessons Learned by One of Canada's foremost entertainment journalists. And I'm talking to Bill Welychka. Bill, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. Yeah, that is a long title, isn't it? You forgot to read the foreword as well. There's a little backstage pass thing featuring the foreword by the
Oh,
Tragically Hips. Yeah, it's a long title. Yeah.
it's one of the longest titles I'm sure they have at the Kitchener Waterloo Library. But the title itself, I'm reading the first chapter there. You talk about the term has been. Why the title A Happy Has Been?
It's gotten a lot of attention, the title. I'm okay with it. I know it's self-deprecating. That's fine. Um, it, an ex-coworker referred to me that way, and it hurt at the time. But then I had to think about it and realize, you know what? In some cases, it's true. If you watched much music or much more music in the 90s or 2000s, and you hear the name Bill Welychka, you might think, oh, what has that guy been up to? Where is he? Is he dead? He hasn't done much lately, has he? No, I work in a smaller market. I've never left television. I've never left media. It's what I do. And despite cuts all over Canada with print, with TV, with radio, I'm still here. So, yeah, the title sort of addresses that. It addresses the fact that, there are people that have followed my career, which blows my mind from day one. And so it encompasses all that, and it gets a lot of attention. The title, I love it.
uh, to say a has been, at this point, Michael Jordan's a has been, right? And it's always better to be a has been than a never was. When I look at that story you tell in the book there, something I really admire about you. When I was in school, I also went to Seneca College, and
Okay.
when I was in school, I remember like, oh, I went to school for journalism, but I also learned to edit and do all the different parts of it, the behind the scenes and the front. And I remember being in my edit bay going, I'm like Bill Welychka. When I hear about some of the projects you did when reading the book, specifically the Garth Brooks interview, you seem very passionate about, oh, I got to host, but I also got to control the narrative a bit and do the producing. Was one part more important to you than the other, or was it kind of like I get to be part of the whole package?
Yeah, I consider it. I consider all the projects, you know, only complete if I'm involved every step of the way because that's what I do. I started off editing and producing, and then I sort of fell into the on-air stuff. And I realized one day, I don't think there's a TV station in the world that would have a record company or the station fly that person to Switzerland, interview Shania Twain, take those tapes, come back, screen the tapes, paper edit, and produce an hour special and oversee the post production and hand the tape to master control and label it. I consider it, I've always considered it all the important things to what I do. And I love the editing. I love the behind the scenes stuff, and I still do. I love editing. And I think I talk about this in the book. It appeals to my mild case of OCD where things have to fit and things have to flow. And, you can't have this without this. So I'll move that there and I'll bring this up here and I'll put this over here, cover this with that because they're talking about that. It's a giant, beautiful puzzle each time.
Yeah, that's how I've always said is like, you get all the pieces when you're out there, then you bring them back, then you have to put together the picture. With you,
Yeah, that's exactly it.
you've got a like. I look back at all the things I grew up watching. Like I was a kid of the '90s. I was born in '82, so like '94 when you were starting. Like that was the prime years of my like understanding music. Do you go back? Do you have an archive of the things you've done? Do you ever go back and watch some of what you did?
Not really. I did save a lot of things. I never really got a lot of pictures. I never really got a lot of autographs. But interviews, some live interviews on some projects I've saved over the years, and I had to find stuff on YouTube when I was putting together the book, to use these for examples of something that I was talking about or discussing, or a quote from a certain artist. A friend of mine is good friends with Vanilla Ice, and she had my Madonna special, which I don't have, where I interviewed Madonna and I interviewed Vanilla Ice talking about Madonna because he's in her sex book.
Mhm.
And so when Madonna was talking about the sex book, and I was putting together the book and talking about the project, she actually, I guess, had this special on VHS and videotaped the TV of my interview with Vanilla Ice and sent it so I could transcribe it for the book. So yeah, I do have some things. I had to rely on YouTube for other things. A lot of the memories I jotted down over the years. And I've been hearing for years, you should write a book, you should write a book. It would go in one ear and out the other. I just thought, who's going to care?
Mm.
But during COVID, all these podcasts kept coming up. And I kept getting asked to be guest on a podcast talking about MuchMusic or my life or my career. And then one day just started writing down the stories that were coming back to me so I wouldn't forget them again. And I started to organize these stories at my computer. And then one day realized I think I might have a book here. I'm not sure. So I just started massaging it and adding to it, rearranging things. And one day I realized I think I have a book. I'm just going to keep at it. And then took about a year to do. But yeah, I needed to reference a lot of things from the past. And I don't like to live in the past.
Mhm.
So I don't really like to watch a lot of old things. I'm glad I kept some though, and managed to pull some frames, some JPEGs off of the video. So I never got pictures, but at least I have frames of video that are, a lot of them are in the book.
Going from one medium to the other, what was it? Was it? Did it feel like a little intimidating going from like video and videography and radio into actually writing?
No, there's a certain amount of writing that I've always done. I was a columnist for the Whig Standard, the Kingston Whig Standard when I moved to Kingston. I did that for like 4 or 5 months, or 4 or 5 years rather. I thought it'd be a couple of months, and it lasted a long time. And I use a lot of those columns as well as jumping off points for chapters in the book. And even when you write an hour special for television, if you need voiceovers, you're writing voiceovers, so you're writing for television. um so yeah, that I love writing as well, but to actually publish a book, it was totally new to me, and the processes involved, and dealing with an editor and dealing with a publisher. And luckily the editor came back with not a whole lot of suggested changes, just tightening things up here and there. But for the most part, it was a fun process. And I'll never know the beauty of giving birth. I imagine it's quite painful, but I imagine it's beautiful that you created something, and I can look at the book that way.
Well,
Not quite as painful though.
you had that your whole career, though, making great specials people were watching too. What I love about the book, I don't know if you're a wrestling fan, but Bret the Hitman Hart is one of my personal heroes as well. And reading your book, it's very conversational. It reminded me of his book. It's very much like I feel like I'm sitting with you and you're just telling me a story. You're not consumed with like imagery or anything like that. You're just telling me how you felt at the time. And I really, really like the writing style and just it's very relaxed.
Well, thank you, Ryan. That was the point. That's how I conduct interviews too. So that was that was done on purpose. It was important to me, very important that whoever is going to read this book knows that I am looking at it as the experience of me talking to a friend, just relaying stories. And I'm glad you got that, because that's how it was intended. And it's how I've done my interviews. It's never an interrogation, question, answer. Hopefully, it's a conversation just like we're having now, Ryan. So, yeah, that was what I was going for. And thank you for saying that I achieved it. It's important. No one wants to be talked down to. And even hosting a MuchMusic intimate and interactive, where there's a live studio audience, there are people watching at home on TV across Canada. Hopefully they're outside of the building watching through the window. I never would say, hey everybody. No, I talk to one person, and that's the person watching, and hopefully engaging them. And that was always important to me. I don't know where that came from, but I never wanted to, say, "Hey, everybody." I never did that, and so that's the way I wanted to write the book.
You talked about having a stutter when you were younger. Reading your story, I really related to. I was a silent mute person, and I work on TV now. And hearing you talk about having your stutter really, really related to me. Was maybe that's where the idea of talking to one person is. Maybe it's easier to talk to one person than a whole group of people.
I've never considered it. Great suggestion. Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that I worked at and I got over it during college. I had to give presentations and things like that. But yeah, it was terrifying, especially in the teen years. And I talk about how when the phone would ring, most people pick up the phone and go, "Hello." I would pick up the phone and go, it'd be a stammer. I couldn't get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be horrifying because the person on the other end is going, "Hello, hello, hello." And it got to the point where if the phone would ring, I would go into a panic attack because I knew what would happen by picking up the phone. I couldn't say the word hello. So, yeah, that's interesting you brought that up. I totally forgot about that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It lasted all the way through grade school. I had three older brothers that stuttered as well. So I don't know. I haven't done any research into what causes a person to stutter or how to get over it. I know that I just realized one day, okay, I have to give a presentation. I can't stutter. Let's do it.
One thing you brought up in the book is looking back at you mentioned Bruce Springsteen's glory days, and there's a joke from The Office where Ed Helms talks about there's so many songs about the good old days. I wish there was a song to remind you that you're living in the good old days. Do you ever look back at that time? It was for me. It was special. I know watching it, it was just like wow. Like looking back at it, it's like you guys did so much creative stuff, and you documented so much important. Like the '90s. It's so crazy that the '90s were 30 years ago, but like that the '90s had so much great music and culture, and you guys played a huge part of that. Did you know you were doing something special, or were you just having fun and being creative?
No, of course not. It's true though. You never know why you're going through it. That those days would be considered the good old days, magical, contributing to Canadian pop culture. You have no idea. You're just interviewing rock stars for a living and traveling around the world and meeting people. It's not until years later where you need 10, 20 years away from something to really
Mm-hmm.
regard it in a special way and hold it in high regard. And I think that's what this Much Music documentary did last year. I was on this book and the tour were coming out around the same time. This Much Music doc, due to legalities, the actual Much Music documentary was supposed to be shown on Crave, and I think it got pulled. They're dealing with record company rights and things like that, and it's all lawyer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the book was happening around the same time as the documentary was coming out, and I was doing interviews for both, and did some of the Much Music touring, the screenings across Canada, and there'd be a Q&A after. And there was a very popular opinion amongst people that attended the doc screenings and for the Q&As that this will be a time and place that will never be replicated ever again, sadly. And I met a lot of parents whose kids are now of the age of where they're getting into music and watching videos and specials on YouTube. And they tried to explain to their kids, no, if we wanted music or if we wanted to see an interview, there was this TV channel that we would go home and watch music videos. And there's like a whole generation out there that doesn't understand that. And so you talk about the 90s. Yeah, man, when you look at the Billboard Top 200 charts in the 90s, like country was on the top, hip hop, rock, dance music, um, you know, alternative. There was just so much going on musically, and it was all doing well. And Much Music showcased it all in a way that I think separated us from MTV in that there was a drive for relevance where we could contextualize what was going on in terms of culture and discuss LGBTQ issues, discuss literacy, discuss race relations. And so it wasn't just entertainment and escapism. We framed it in a way that it mattered. And I don't think we see that a whole lot today with entertainment. So there's a lot to be proud of for the 90s and the part of the 2000s, I think, with what MuchMusic did. And to be a part of it, how humbling and beautiful is that? Where I'm on the receiving end of people wanting to know about that and talking about it. And it's very nostalgic. I don't like to, like I said, spend too much time in the past. But when someone wants to bring it up, those years, I have all the time in the world.
That's amazing. Like I know for me, I work in media now, and like I feel like I just stole so much of what you guys did. You know, I do a festival show in Northern Ontario in Sudbury with Northern Lights Festival, and I just remember. I remember you. I think it was you at Somersault in Toronto. I think that was the festival, and I always think about this joke anytime I hear the band Bush. That just cuts to you in a tent talking to these girls, and you say to Gavin, "I put a little X beside the bush, and you got a new name." It's just a weird, funny joke that's always stuck with me all these years. But yeah, MuchMusic was
Yeah,
always a
there was a
big
whole lot.
influence on us.
I talk about the festival experience in the
Yeah.
book. I got to a point where I was festivaled out. There was fests and rock fests and so many fests and festivals that I got to the point where we were covering Woodstock, lots of stocks, where I said to my boss, Denise Donlin, can I just stay here and do interviews? I don't want to go out into the crowd and talk to people and all that mud and shit and crap. Let me just stay back here and talk to people. I'm done with festivals. And then you don't do them anymore and then you miss them.
Yeah.
That's how life goes.
But I was watching it, looking at your YouTube clips online. Like there is like I just watch it now, especially now that I'm a bit more of an adult and I am in the business. I'm like, you guys just look like you're having fun, and like
Oh man, we were. Yeah, there wasn't a bad day.
yeah,
In the 17 years that I was in that building, 299 Queen Street, and I explain it to people. It's very surreal. You're not supposed to love your job. If you do, that's great, but it's not a prerequisite to have a job where you absolutely love it. And I did, and I knew full well how lucky I was and how grateful I was and humbled I am all these years later that it was me that had to experience that and live through it live through it. Yeah, lots of crazy parties, traveling the world, interviewing every single idol that I ever had growing up in terms of music. And yeah, and I talk about that in the book, these perfect circles that I had throughout my life. And that is growing up, buying albums since I was in kindergarten, um, having patches on my jean jacket or buttons on my jean jacket or posters in my bedroom or posters on my locker room in high school of bands. And I've interviewed and bonded and spent a whole lot of time with every single one of them and hundreds more. What a fortunate position to have been in.
you know, watching the channel years ago, I remember just watching, sometimes thinking, did Bill edit this? I remember watching Spotlight with my brother once, and it was an episode on Chicago, the city, not the band. We're like, I'm pretty sure Bill did this because he likes Liz Phair.
I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah. I think we featured Liz Phair, Smashing Pumpkins.
Urge Overkill.
Yeah. And realized, yeah, oh, I got to get Liz Phair in there somewhere. And yeah, one of my biggest crushes that I had in my life, I got to spend a lot of time with. I
That's awesome.
loved Liz Phair, still do.
Is
Yeah.
yeah. So is music like you talk a lot about music in the book? I didn't. I'm a little young for Outlaws and Heroes. Like when you started at much, but like I knew you. You introduced me to the Cure, and I love the Cure to this day. And
Oh, what an awesome thing to say.
mm,
That is so great. Thank you. Yeah, one of my favorite bands.
is music still important to you all these years? For the last question.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book. I don't know where I'd be without music, not just a career, but life. It's music to me is just more than something you stream in the background while you're washing dishes. It's something that I get into and listen to and pay attention to and open myself up to, and it becomes a friend on long drives. It becomes part of your life at the cottage, on the lake. It becomes something you share with friends. Go to a concert, any concert, and you see this bonding thing happen with complete strangers hugging each other and singing to each other. And you go see Rush and you see 15,000 guys air drumming or playing air guitar and they're lost. And when you go see the Hip, for years, one of my favorite bands. I think I'm wearing a Hip shirt here. There's Gord, yeah. And you get lost in this world that only these 5 guys created, and they invite you in, and it changes your life in some cases. So yeah, music way more important to me than just something that is playing in the background. And I'm not a musician. I don't write songs, but have managed to spend a great deal of my life with musicians who do write great songs, and very, very fortunate that I chose that path in broadcasting, where I can be a music fan and also a music journalist. And I'm still involved in music. I now work in radio. Um, so, there's that, and I still do TV, and I've never left the business. But I'm glad that all these years later, I can still say I am a huge music fan. I still check out new bands. You have to. Yeah.
All right, it's a really big honor for me to talk to you. I've been a big fan for all of my life, and I'm really enjoying the book. A Happy Has-Been, Exciting Times and Lessons Learned by One of Canada's Foremost Entertainment Journalists by Bill Welychka, and he'll be in the Grand River KW area coming up on April 16th. Check him out at Coles in Stratford, the Indigo at Conestoga Mall in Waterloo, and the Indigo in Cambridge, all on April 16th later this month. And Bill, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Ryan. I do appreciate the interest. And yeah, I'm looking forward to anyone that wants to come by and say hi and ask questions. And for more information on the book, billwelychka.ca. And we'll see you down the road. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.